Hello and welcome to Sport and News. My name is Faith JELAGAT. We welcome our viewers in Nairobi and around the world. On this program, we discuss matters health, education, politics, and arts and culture. But before we begin, let's have the headlines. President Kabila of the Democratic Republic of Congo has stated he plans to stay in politics and does not rule out running again for presidency in 2023. He will be stepping down after a long-awaited election on 23rd December. Kabila stated in an interview that he wants to protect his many accomplishments by sticking to politics. The 47-year-old was due to step down in 2016 at the end of his constitutional mandate, but the election to replace him has been delayed repeatedly, leading to protests that have led to many deaths in the country. Denis Mukwege and Nadia Murad, this year's Nobel Peace Prize winners, are now calling for justice for victims of sexual violence. The two received an award for their efforts to end rape as a weapon of war. Denis Mukwege is a doctor who helps victims of sexual violence in DRC, and Nadia Murad is a Yazidi rights activist and survivor of sexual slavery by the ISIS. The team began its work in August, a year after it was approved by the United Nations Security Council, and they are planning to carry on with the fight. Moving on, South Africa's economy slipped into a technical recession in its second quarter of 2018, as the figures showed that there was a decrease in gross domestic product for April, May, and June. Statistics showed a shrink of the economy by 0.7%. This marked two consecutive periods of contraction, which therefore equates to a recession. There was a sharp decline in agriculture, forestry, and industrial sectors over the 3-month period. It is reported that the economic decline was by a whopping 29.2% in total. The country has now exited the recession after reporting a 2.2 GDP growth for the third quarter of the year. Stakeholders are now welcoming the rebound in GDP growth, and they have pointed out that the overall growth of the year remains weak and could be negatively impacted by load shedding. Now, the story of South Africa's recession is an all too familiar script to very many African countries. Now, Kenya being on the limelight, we're the 69th largest economy with a GDP of over 85 billion. And now, even with the statistics, the cost of living for many Kenyans is a worry, and we have garnered billions of shillings in loan from China. Now, on our discussion today, we discuss Kenya's economy. What do these loans mean to us as Kenyans? And also we discuss, is Kenya at risk of a recession? Are we managing our agricultural sectors well? Those are the matters that we will be discussing on today's topic episode. And of course, you can reach me on my social media platforms at ByJela on Facebook and also on Twitter at Faith JELAGAT. Now, I can already see some comments streaming in, and that one Jerry44 is saying, interesting discussion. If South Africa has fallen prey to recession, we may not be so lucky. And now, of course, let's keep the conversation going. You can reach me on my social media platforms on Twitter at ByJela and also on Facebook at Faith JELAGAT. And now, to continue with this discussion on Kenya's economy, our correspondent Edith Mbenesi has prepared this feature for us. Take a look.
The economic threshold for Kenya for many years has been standard. As of 2018 estimates, Kenya had a GDP of $85.98 billion, making it the 96th largest economy in the world. However, in the recent years, Kenya's economy has faced major backlash in regards to prices of commodities and the currency rates against the dollar.
Me, as a Kenyan citizen, I feel like our economy is bad. But also, the Chinas are helping. Yes, it's a good thing. But thinking about it, they're also destroying our economy, because right now they're flooding our economy with their materials which might not be legit.
Kenya's government has cluttered loans from various states, but one country that has stood out the most is China. China has given the Kenyan government billions of shillings that is said to have been invested in infrastructure. The question now is, how is Kenya going to pay all these loans? According to many Kenyans, the number of loans taken are too much, and the common mwananchi is forced to bear the burden. This then begs the discussion on what the future of Kenya's economy is. Is there a chance of recession if the government does not give its finances rights?
Yes, I think Kenya could possibly go through a recession because they have been getting loans from the Chinese for infrastructure, and the infrastructure they have been going on about is not even able to provide enough money to pay back the loan, which is giving the Chinese the ability to take over the jobs, many stuffs. We have, for example, the SGR, and it can pretty set Kenya into a very big dilemma.
According to one businessman, he says that the state of Kenya's economy is at risk because the country is operating on a system we do not fully comprehend, the Western system of doing things. He also mentions that this is evident that Kenya, among other African countries, has failed in maintaining the Muzungu way of managing finances. Therefore, a lot needs to be done to increase the stability of Kenya's economy. This includes a balance between the well-performing state of Kenya's GDP to the cost of living here in Kenya. Reporting for Spot On News, my name is Edith Benesi.
Now we are joined live by Edith Mbenesi, who is in Machakos County. Now Edith, if you can hear me, what are Kenyans saying about the current state of Kenya's economy?
Thank you very much, Faith JELAGAT. And yes, Kenyans are worried about the GDP of Kenya. Although it is at a good place, rather, they feel that it is still at a high cost because their standards of living are still high, and which this has been triggered by the many loans Kenya has borrowed from China, which is also a struggle for the government to pay them back, which has also been imposed on Kenyans because they feel that the prices of stuff are really hiked, and this is causing frustration to most Kenyans. And so yes, they are worried about the GDP of Kenya in general. Back to you in studio, JELAGAT.
Okay, thank you very much, Edith Mbenesi, for that comprehensive report. I can already see some tweets streaming in, and at Cynthia Koth is saying, a very informative feature, looking forward to hear more on this discussion. Now, to help us answer the questions of Kenya's economy, discussing on recession and matters Kenyan loans, we have three experts on your screen right now. And on the far left, we have Moses Faida. He is an economics enthusiast. We are also joined by Mr. Robert Kamanja. He is a business consultant with Uwezo Microfinance. And finally, on the far right of your screen, we have Mr. Raymond Toroitich. He is an economist. Welcome to the show, Mr. Raymond. Now we begin with you, Mr. Moses Faida. In your take, what is the current state of Kenya's economy, even with us being the 69th largest economy?
Well, I think Kenya's economy is not doing that bad. Kenya is developing very fast. You can see it's evident when you go to Mombasa Road, a lot of go-downs being constructed, a lot of real estate going on. But again, the problem is with distributing this wealth. You know, we've got a very high rate of inequality in Kenya. You see a place like Karen, very high end, and just next door there is Kibera, a very big slum, and so that is like some of the evidence we have for inequality. But generally, it's doing good.
Thank you for that very informative insight. Now, moving on, Kenya's government has taken up billions of shillings in loan from China, which has caused a lot of controversy for very many Kenyans. What is your take on that move by the government?
Well, I don't think loans are bad. The only problem is when you take loans on bad terms and taking loans and you invest them in things that will not benefit the country. But taking a loan to invest in infrastructure, I think that's a pretty good deal. We still don't know if the SGR will be a success, but we are waiting to see. But generally, a loan for infrastructure, that's a good loan. Yeah.
Okay, and now let's move to you, Mr. Robert Kamanja. I don't know if you have a different take on the issue of Kenyans taking up loans from China, billions of shillings. What is your take on that move?
Well, I think it's a good thing and bad thing. Loans are good when you take them for use into productive uses. But now it's like we we are not so sure some of this money where it's going to the intended purpose. They could be going to some people. Good enough the government is working on corruption and people are being aligned in court. The loans are not bad, but they need to be uh, taken in such a way that there is something that can be seen out of it. Yes.
Now, on that note of Kenya's economy, our GDP is currently very well performing. However, the cost of living is a worry for very many Kenyans. Why do you think this is so?
You see, GDP is a factor of so many things. And as you say, there's a contradiction between GDP growth and the cost of living. In actual fact, we are moving into a recession. The country is moving into a recession. There is no money. People are complaining there is no money in the country. Why? Because some of the fundamentals that we need to address about the economy, addressing the aggregate demand, which drives the economy, where the consumer, the Kenyan, has money to spend, to buy goods, and that is what drives the industries and it creates money, money starts circulating. That is not there. We don't have, the aggregate demand is suppressed and people are complaining there is no money. So we are not in a very good situation because we are heading into a recession. All these are signs of a recession. When there is no money, people are not buying, companies start scaling down, they start putting people or terminating people, and then you start finding we are moving into that kind of a situation.
Okay, now let's move to you, Mr. Raymond Toroitich. I know you have a very different opinion when it comes to Kenya and the issue of recession. What is your take on Kenya? Do you think that we might end up in a recession?
To answer your question, you would really have to define what a recession is. I think a recession is a situation where there is low income and the production is low. And there are two types of recession. There is food recession and there is technical recession. A food recession is a situation where production is low in all sectors of the economy. A technical recession is a situation where a major sector of the economy is facing a downfall. In my opinion, I would say Kenya is facing a technical, is in threat of facing a technical recession because in the past 4 quarters of the year, the economy has been growing, the GDP has been growing, and a recession is defined where 2 or more quarters of a financial year, there is a decline in GDP. But in Kenya, for the previous 2 quarters, we have seen a growth. So, in my opinion, I would say Kenya is not really in threat of facing a full recession, but a technical recession.
Okay, so also as we are in the stage of discussing the Kenya's GDP, the GDP is very high, however, the cost of living is a worry for very many Kenyans. Do you think that there needs to be a balance?
I think GDP is a factor of 2 things: aggregate demand and aggregate supply. And an economy, I would say, is at equilibrium, where the aggregate demand and the aggregate supply are equal. And to be sincere, that's not the case when it comes to Kenya. Kenya has greater demand and the supply is low. That's why the people are complaining that the money is not enough and such. I think that's because that's a very big reason why the situation on the ground is not the same as what our statistics tell us.
Okay, thank you very much. Now that has been Mr. Moses Faida, Mr. Robert Kamanja, and Mr. Raymond Toroitich. Thank you very much for your time and input on this show today. Now this is my take. Kenya's economy has a well-performing GDP of over 85 billion and even being number 69 on the largest economy platform. Now this is still a worry for us because the cost of living for Kenyans is high, and when the Kenyans are not satisfied, there's need to worry. And now note this, our country has an ability to produce agriculturally, even in our industries. We just need to invest more. On the issue of loans, we have garnered billions of shillings in loans, and this is not wrong. However, how we use the money is what matters. When we build on the right infrastructure, we will get more. But if we invest wrongly, then we are in trouble. And recession is not an impossibility for us. How we handle our finances at the moment is what matters. Of course, let's keep the conversation going. You can always reach me on my Twitter handle @byjela and on Facebook @faithjelagat. We would love to know what your take is on the current state of Kenya's economy. Now we will end the show right there. This has been Sport News with me, Faith Jelagat. See you next week.